The National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa is urging government to engage with stakeholders to prevent massive job losses at ArcelorMittal. This comes after the steel giant, announced plans to wind down its steelmaking operations, threatening about 3,500 posts. The company cites weak economic conditions, structural challenges and uncompetitive market conditions as just some of the reasons for the closure. Let's get your reaction to this now. Bring in Numsa spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi, who's with us via our video link. Phakamile, Happy New Year. Thanks for making time to speak to us here on the SABC News channel. Unfortunately, not a very happy one for those of your members who might be affected by this. Let me start by just getting a sense from you, given the fact that ArcelorMittal says there were several factors that led to this. Do you feel this could have been avoided?
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers. Ayanda, thank you so much for having me on the show, and of course, also compliments of the new season to you and to your viewers. We do think definitely that a lot more could have been done. We say this because what ArcelorMittal is raising about the long steel business, this is not the first time they've raised these concerns.
Right.
If you recall, late 2023, they said that this was going to happen. They actually cited the very same reasons that they are citing now. They spoke about government intervention in relation to the steel industry, and they feel that they're operating in an uncompetitive environment. As you know, that this is something that has to do with policy, and even at that time, Numsa intervened to ensure that there was engagement between AMSA management and the Office of the Presidency and the DTIC. And what we're saying is that we understand that there was some kind of engagement, but we are asking the question about whether practical steps were taken, because if practical steps were taken, then why is ArcelorMittal still raising the same issues and threatening, to cut 3,500 jobs, which would be utterly devastating in both Newcastle and Citibank if that were to be allowed to happen.
Yeah, the CEO of AMSA has been quoted by News 24 as alluding to some of those talks. In fact, there's a direct quote here where he says the discussions were good, but nothing concrete was put on the table.
That is unfortunate. And it is our perspective as a union that we believe that government is not taking this matter seriously. We all have a responsibility to play our role in society, especially in a country like ours, where we've got staggeringly high levels of unemployment. I mean, unemployment sits at over 40% for those who've given up looking for work. We are the most unequal society in the world, and we've got extremely high levels of poverty. If these jobs were lost in Newcastle and also in Vereeniging, you must understand that in those areas, if you've ever gone to those areas where ArcelorMittal plants exist, you will know that these are communities that are actually dependent on this company operating. If it shuts down those plants, it is unlikely that those workers or those communities will find employment. So this is one of those situations where government has to take direct action. It cannot just be words. Steps must be taken to ensure that these jobs are not lost.
Yeah. You did say that at the heart of this seems to be policy issues, and I wonder, Phakamile, if you could help us drill down into what exactly we're talking about here, especially for people who are outside of the industry. My understanding, for example, is that a big part of the contributing factor is the fact that demand for long steel, specifically from South Africa, has decreased. And that's because, for example, we've been de-industrializing for quite some time. There's also much cheaper steel being produced in China, which makes, of course, keeping these operations going a whole lot more difficult. So with that in the backdrop, how is changing policy going to assist?
Well, it can assist, because you have to, as a government, play a role in protecting your own industries and protecting your own sectors. And if we're frank, the last 30 years, this government has not done that. We've seen massive deindustrialization. We've seen massive job shedding taking place in the manufacturing sector. There's been not a lot done by the state to protect small and medium-sized, particularly small and medium-sized steel companies. I mean, if a big company like ArcelorMittal is complaining and saying that they can't cope, can you imagine how difficult it must be to run a steel firm if you're a small firm in South Africa? It doesn't help that on top of that, we had crippling load shedding. Again, the load shedding that took place, the blame sits squarely with this government for failing to listen to the science and to listen to the engineers who were saying that they needed to ensure that the coal-fired power stations were properly maintained. So we have had a lot of faux pas, a lot of mistakes, a lot of own goals that were scored by this government, where they completely failed to take clear measures to protect our economy, to protect our jobs, and ensure that these industries are actually able to function and to be sustainable in the long term. And so Numsa is once again calling on government not just to engage, but to actually act in this matter. Because if they don't, we are going to see massive job losses. And unfortunately, those jobs will not be replaced. I don't see how we are going to benefit as a society to increase the unemployment population in this country. This is a very unsustainable situation, and it does require that the state must take action. And so we are simply calling on them to do their work. If they're saying that they care about protecting jobs, if they say that they care about protecting the economy, then they have a responsibility to intervene in this matter and actually ensure that ArcelorMittal gets the kind of assistance and support that it needs so that it can continue to be sustainable.
Yeah, as you mentioned, ArcelorMittal has been sounding the alarm for quite some time. The sense I initially had, Phakamile, was that this is a far-gone conclusion. Are you saying that the jobs can still be saved?
They can be saved, but it would require for the state to take steps in order to ensure that happens. I mean, we're at the point where the only intervention that can happen is at the level of the state. No one else can intervene except the state. If they don't intervene, then unfortunately, this business is going to collapse. And I think what's also, people must bear in mind that before ArcelorMittal was ArcelorMittal, it was ISCO. It was a state-owned entity which was providing cheap steel for the economy. Unfortunately, one of the decisions that was taken post-1994 was to privatize ISCO, sell it off and make it ArcelorMittal South Africa. It is very clear that this is a company that actually plays quite a significant role in our economy. So if you're going to allow it to collapse, you're only going to deepen and worsen the conditions for us as a nation. So all we can do as a union is to play our role in trying to support this company. We are not going to benefit if ArcelorMittal collapses. It means that our members lose their jobs. So we think it is very important for us to assist them, to lend our voice, to amplify their message so that we get the kind of state intervention that we need to ensure that this business is able to be viable and to sustain itself in the long term.
Yeah, AMSA also being quoted as saying that, in fact, if this trajectory does continue and they do have to lay people off, they are willing to assist them to find other job opportunities. I wonder how confident you are in something like that really making a difference.
We would obviously welcome that. But as I said to you, Ayanda, if you go to these towns where these plants are, there's not a lot of job opportunities, and that is just the reality. They really aren't. And so unless we get intervention from the state, and of course we would love to be able to say that definitely people will be reemployed, but we know that that's not necessarily going to be the case.